Good afternoon, everybody, for coming here for this particular technical session 1 of the day 2. Let me introduce the distinguished speaker here. And as you know, the theme is monitoring WAS outcomes and climate change impact. So the speakers are organized in such a way that they are going to touch upon the water and sanitation issues that impacts climate change and its vulnerability and risk. So we have 5 presentations today lined up. One is online and rest of them are like offline here. The presenters are already here among the audience. So without taking much time, let me introduce the first speaker today. Pablo Morales-Rico has an extensive experience in wastewater projects across the world, and also he is experts on greenhouse gas mitigations, water management initiatives, and he has published many scientific articles on water sanitation, climate change in peer-reviewed journals, both national and international level. So, without taking much time, we are going run through his presentation, and then if there are any question, we'll take it up for him. And may I request you, Pablo, to be online, please, during the presentation of yours, recorded presentation. Yeah.
Of course, I will be here.
Please.
Security and climate action. Good afternoon for you, early morning from Mexico City. My name is Pablo Morales-Rico, recently graduated from the Center on Research and Advanced Studies from the National Polytechnic Institute in Mexico. Today, I present to you a preliminary assessment on a critical and underexplored topic in urban water management, entitled Methane in Groundwater Wells of Mexico City, Occurrence, Potential Origins, and Associated Risk. First of all, I would like to thank the Global South Academic Conclave for this space to discuss this challenge in overexploited aquifers and the emerging challenge for water security and climate action. To understand the magnitude of the problem, we must first look beneath our feet. Mexico City sits atop a structurally complex and overexploited aquifer system. As you can see in the diagram, we rely on deep extraction that pierces through layers of lacustrine clay to reach the main aquifer. The case of Mexico City faces two challenges: the extraction from deep lacustrine sediments and volcanic aquifers. While weak practitioners are used to commonly monitor for arsenic, fluoride, and bacteria, dissolved gases are rarely part of standard water quality protocols. Currently, local wastes contribute about 45% of total supply for the city. This intensive extraction not only lowers water tables, but also mobilizes fluids from deep strata, bringing with them compounds that were previously confined, such as methane. In the map on the right, just for geographical reference, you can see the location of the wells and the location of Mexico City in the country map. On the left side of this slide is a photograph of a sampling well. Our approach involves analyzing both the gas within the wells and the extracted water. The gas analyzers used in this study are also shown. On the right, we illustrate the components of a typical Mexico City well, which include the well casing, the annulus, and the concrete casing. Where feasible, we measure all parts of the wells. So, what did we measure? We measured in the direct well casing emissions, the down well methane concentration profiles up to 40 meters deep, and in the well annulus emissions, as you can see in the image below. We adapted a skid chamber method to our group to achieve that. We also measured dissolved gases in the water extracted through the headspace elevation method. And also, we perform gas chromatography to determine gas origin and composition. in the figures A and B is the vertical profile of the Southeast A well. Look at this vertical profile. At great depths, 40 meters or more, hydrostatic pressure keeps gases dissolved in the water. However, as the water rises through the well pipe, the pressure drops and the methane dissolves violently. Strange phenomena due to methane dissolution were reported by plant operators, such as boiling effect in the water and sudden fires during maintenance tasks. In the figure CID, a different pattern was observed, while CO2 is the main emitter for this well. To simplify this phenomena, we made an analogy to call this the champagne effect that is displayed in the diagram. Our data shows a clear correlation. At shallower depths, the concentration of dissolved gases decreases because it has already transitioned to the gas phase, generating potential explosive atmospheres in confined spaces, such as water treatment facilities, before the water is even treated. Let's move on to the hard data. We monitored several key wells across the city, and the results are presented in this figure. I want to highlight the well Southeast A. We recorded a peak of 93.8 grams of methane per cubic meter. To put this in perspective, look at the error bars and compare them to the safety threshold, the first bar in green, reported by the Office for Safety Mining from the USA. The numeric value is really close, 10 to 13 grams per cubic meter. In the case of these two wells in the red and burgundy, the explosion risk threshold is 2 or 3 times higher, far above the norm. In contrast, well North B presents much lower level. Probably this problem is not generalized, but rather that there are specific hotspots requiring immediate attention due to the explosion risk. To put this in the proper scale, we just monitored 5 wells from the 500 that exist in Mexico City. After the quantitative analysis, a fundamental question arises. Where does this gas come from? Is it a natural gas leak or is it natural to the subsurface? Gas chromatography analysis gave us the answer. The almost total absence of ethane and higher alkanes, C3 to C5, rules out a thermogenic source of natural propane gas leaks. This confirms that we are dealing with biogenic methane, produced perhaps by methanogenic archaea decomposing ancient organic matter in the deep lacustrine sediments. Let's not forget that Mexico City was built on lacustrine clay. From the previous slide, we rule out the thermogenic origin. I present to you in this one a stylized chromatogram that illustrates the general patterns of the detected peaks of unidentified volatile organic compounds with high molecular weights, which opens now a new question about what other compounds might be accompanying the methane in these wells. This study confirms the presence of methane, a risky concentration in specific wells in Mexico City, particularly in the southeast zone, with feasible potential methane recovery. Absence of ethane and other alkanes points to a biogenic origin of the biogas. Systematized risk assessment for methane in wells using rapid detection methods is a must, like concentration profiles or routine dissolved methane analysis. High CO2 in North A and B suggests a subsurface microbial activity. A focused water quality study on biological process is recommended. A final remark is that groundwater is vital for almost every city, and we must ensure its safe extraction. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm now open to your questions.
Scientific study for drinking water system in Mexico City, and what an analysis you're trying to measure the methane and other solid particles in the water that people drinks in city. Uh, any questions? One or two questions we can take it up. Yes, please, Sagar. Yeah. Pablo, thank you for your work. You covered test. I have one
I can hear you well. Could you please put your mic a little bit closer?
closer. Yeah. Now I am audible.
Uh, now I can hear you.
Okay, so it was very comprehensive study that you have produced. I have a question. Did have you thought of getting methane emission from the perspective of dissolved oxygen? Water which is underground tends to have dissolved oxygen, and it is in contact with organic substance.
Well, a very good question, but no, we didn't measure the dissolved oxygen in the water. In essence, I think it will be very low because it was already super saturated of methane. But I don't take those measurements. But that's a good question.
Okay, yeah, because of your depth graph, I can see that the concentration of CO2 was rising. So I was curious
Yeah,
to
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. My name is Shivali. I just wanted to understand what were the factors that contributed to methane emissions that were found underground? Is it also because of dumping of waste and burning of waste in the landfills and in open? Like, was that a part of your study or did it come out?
Well, it's difficult to say this that is because of the waste, because of the depth of the wells. The wells are the shallower one. It's like 100 meters and beyond. The deepest is like 150 and 200 meters underground. So I think I can discard that possibility.
So, could you tell two, three factors that contributed to these emissions? Because I'm hearing it for me, it's personally new. Hearing that emissions are also found underground. So, could you just tell perhaps two, three factors that led to these emissions underground?
Well, it could be. I where you know that Mexico City is a really seismic zone, so we have an hypothesis that perhaps some of the drainage is like more of 50 years old. So perhaps there's some leaks that they are going to that they are contaminating the groundwater. Recently, in the 2024, it was a big deal with in in the southeast part of the city. There were also diesel contamination in a big zone of the city. So I could also send you that data. It's really quite amazing.
Hi, Pablo. I'm Jigisha from CWAS. Thank you for the comprehensive study. I was a little bit curious on what are the next steps. Like you've derived that these are the emissions from the ground, underground, and so how are you planning it further? Are you planning it to capture a study on capturing it or mitigating it? Just curious to know that. Thank you.
Okay, the next steps. First of all, a complete assessment of the risk, because as you can see, there's the concentrations that we found is just 4 times the saturation constant of methane in water at normal pressure and temperature. So for me, that's the critical first step. And after that, when you have got the hot spots, you can also try to recover that methane because it's a lot of methane. You can make a facility to perhaps turn it to biogas or something like that. So there's a really good opportunities there. But as you know, perhaps in India is different, but here in Mexico, all the investment comes from public funding, so that's kind of difficult things. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. Pablo, thank you so much. But we request you to hang on for some time once the session gets over. So final thank you will be later on. Yeah, for the moment. Let's move on to next presenter, Sagar Gupta. His topic is on preliminary scoping study to estimate greenhouse gas emission in Banswara district, Banswara city rather, southern Rajasthan. Before he takes over, may I introduce him to the audience? He is a guest faculty at the college, University College of Engineering, Govind Guru Tribal University, with experience in sanitation and sustainable infrastructure. He brings over 10 years of experience across academia, consultancy, research. Sagar has contributed in curriculum development, so that's academia, and students monitoring and applied research, effectively bringing theory and real world together. So that's his expertise, and his contribution in curriculum development and students monitoring is quite appreciable. And also, he has an hands-on experience and on innovative ways to resource technology. And also, I'm cutting short of your. It's not enough, but yes, we have a distinguished speaker here. Sagar, over to you. 10 minutes, if you can limit your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy sir. First of all, I would like to thank Center for Science and Environment, CDRF, and CEPT University for giving this platform to share my ideas. So, starting with the presentation, as we know, greenhouse gas originate from the activities, anthropological activities that we do. So, it is basically can come from fossil fuel burning. It can come from decomposition of waste, composting waste. So everything that consumes some energy will leads to this chemical reaction which will emit carbon dioxide. So why we are discussing this at a long this lectures and platforms, because there is a cap of 1.5 degrees Celsius which is kept all over the globe to limit our carbon emissions. Right now we are having 400 gigatons of a bank of where we keep we try to measure our carbon emissions. So currently we have exhausted 70 more than 70% of it, and we tends to move forward with the same pace, then we are not able to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius target in its limit. So my study encapsulate the city of Banswara, which is a town in southern Rajasthan and have a population of 1,20,000. And it is it is an attempt that what sort of emissions are being produced from such a tier 3 towns, because whenever we talk about an urbanization like metro cities and all. So my study tends to target the very bottom of the pyramid, but the inputs I have used is from the secondary study. Right now I have not used anything from primary. However, I have mapped the stakeholders to get the secondary data sources from the possible sources. So this study tends to aim to connect with the national paradigm that we have launched for long-term emission measurements, which we encapsulate in terms of climate. So this climate strategy have 7 elements that includes clean electricity, low carbon transport, inclusive urban adaptation, manufacturing and industrial decarbonization, atmospheric CO2 removal, tree and vegetation enhancement, and economic path to zero, net zero. So we see so many initiatives in our towns like PM Surya Yojana. Then we are having 20% of ethanol blended in our fuels. So all these things are happening, and how it impacts the environment. The major thing why we are doing this, because it involves certain economical advantages, because we know today we discussed in several sessions that we are having a deficiency of funds. So at the same time, if we effectively monitor it and try to mitigate that, it can be converted into a tradable exchange form. It can be a bond, it can be of credits. So if we see, the carbon credits market is growing at a vast pace. So last year it was recorded in 2024, it has been recorded at 633.87 billion dollars, and it tends to rise at a higher rate, and it will achieve a market of $10,552 billion by 2034. So it's a big figure. If we try to put our efforts together, then there can be change, or there can be contribution from tier 3 towns as well. So as this global thought, how I can implement it at local level. So I have tried it to take the data, put it into a structured manner. To do this, okay, so just this scopes cover SDG 6, responsible consumption, sustainable cities, and all over combining these 3, we can achieve a climate action. So this is Banswara. As you can see, it is situated in south of Rajasthan, and it is having these 5 tehsils that are how we calculate our road development, our population. So this is beautiful city of Banswara. This we are the means of showing this, that we are having water, we are having hydroelectric dams, and then we are having lot of greenery. So the sinks is available, the infrastructure is available. So what kind of emission does a tier 3 town produces? So moving forward, basically my study, in my study I tried to address these 3 scopes, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. We all know about it. Like if I am causing, my industry is causing any emission directly into the environment, then it's direct emission and it will be in scope 1. And if I'm consuming electricity to run my industry, it will be in scope 2. And scope 3 is the waste, and it can be in upstream and downstream. Like I'm using water, it is getting converted into wastewater. It is in scope 3, but when it is treated, it is at upstream, and when we get the sludge, it is at a downstream. So just to get familiar with the topic, first thing I did was to set up a geographical boundary. That's why I picked Banswara, and then I identify the sources that contribute to greenhouse gases emission. And then I selected a framework which should allow me that the data which I have collected can be incorporated in a standard format so that we can understand it a better manner. Then I collected the data, understood the stakeholders, then mapped the scope and activities to which tier I can go. Like as in Rajasthan, we don't have any tier 2 type of monitoring, so I don't have data. So I was using the top-down approach where IPCC has developed their coefficients, or we call it emission factors. It can be methane conversion factors. Anything means different methodology uses a different term. So basic thing is I captured the essence was like activity I need to focus on. Then I presented a report. Getting forward, I chose a methodology developed by World Resource Institute. We call it Global Protocol for Community Scale Greenhouse Gas Inventories. It allows me to use community scale, and I can change it interchange with I can interchange it with citywide, I can change it with region wide. Okay. So what my basic study focused on these three parameter that incorporates stationary energy, transportation, waste. However, it is having these six parameters, but when I focus on these six parameter, I move to a basic plus category. So it has this methodology where I can choose. I want to use a basic methodology or I want to choose a basic plus methodology. So I will not be getting the data. I didn't got the data for this industrial process and product, agriculture, forestry, and other land use, the emission data. But I got for the forest coverage data for the purpose of calculation. So, uh, jotting down the maths activities was multiplied with the emission factors, which was available with the IPCC. You can see different color codes. The green color code is being used as it allows me to collect the data for basic. These are the gases which we focus, but the mainly the citywide emissions are constrained to in my study to carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And this is the framework for stationary energy, which includes the utilization of your LPG at household levels, fuels for your boilers. So it was very difficult to get the consumption of fuel like wood, coal, or this data was not available in public domain. It needs to be collected with the primary study. So I was not able to collect those data. Based on the this LPG data, which was available in the public domain, it come out to be that 2 cylinders per month was utilized by one family, and it was giving a total emission of 8,909 tons per year. So cumulatively 26,000 of carbon emission was recorded from stationary energy. Then there was transportation. So as Banswara is connected with the only one mobility, that is roadway, so we are having a lot of vehicles. So the majority area is governed by the motorcycles, bike, which runs on petrol. And the other are agriculture, what I can say, tractors, trolleys. And this emission was combined to be 14 lakh 600,000. So, and overall, that emissions combining all, converting into their multiplying with their emission factor, it was 5,92,900. Now, from the waste sector, we have municipal waste treatment plant, and you need to focus on configuration and type of technology they focus on. So I use that. This is a SBR plant from where we are getting 2,487.1 tons of carbon equivalency per year. So total Banswara produced 6,22,113 tons of carbon emission. And if you see the land covers, we cover about 56.19% of agriculture coverage. From there, you can get the emission factor, and this is act as a carbon sink. So net emission is 34,113. So this gives us a figure that it is carbon neutral, but I have just come close to carbon neutrality, but I have considered only three factors. So if we go into dive deep into these factors, we are able to see that this will make a change. So if anybody is feeling free to start their franchise in Banswara for electric vehicles, they should focus on it, because we have a heavy emission on that. So future thing, like you can use GPC basic plus to have more consolidated or more comprehensive results. And I will like to see you in this upcoming conference. There we are going to present the further part of this study. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sagar. Let's quickly take up a couple of questions. Sagar, you just be here only. Any questions, please? Carbon emission in Banswara. Yeah, no questions? Okay, let's move on to the third presentation. We have a distinguished guest, The third presentation is by our speaker, Mambwe Evans. Yes, and his topic is fecal sludge management experiences in implementing performance-based contracts, Lusaka, Water Supply and Sanitation Company. So over to you, Ivan, please. Ivan comes from the background of civil engineer and public health and diploma in product operation management and joined Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company. He is a distinguished team members of the mandate that delivers the provision of safety management sanitation citywide inclusive sanitation program. So over to you, Ivan.
Okay, thank you so much. I really want to appreciate you for that introduction. But maybe I also give respect to Sagar. The research that you people are doing, for me, is what is bringing money into the operation. Yeah, without your research, it becomes very difficult to convince the philanthropists to give me money to carry out operations. So please continue in your research. I really give respect to research, because without it, it becomes difficult to get the money that I need. So basically, mine is not a research. It's good that you went before me. Mine is just purely the experience of what is happening in our city. So I would want to warn our sensitive viewers that the pictures you're about to see may be disturbing to your sight. But at the same time, I will tell you that this is the reality of what is happening. Okay. Here we go. That's my presentation for this afternoon. I do not want to waste so much time. I'm sure you follow through as we proceed. So basically, this is just the overview of the city that we are coming from. Lusaka Water has a mandate to provide water and sanitation services to over 3 million people, both in the city and in the peri-urban city of Lusaka. So water supply coverage is basically at 94%, and sanitation services coverage is around 82%. That provides for both on-site sanitation service as well as the off-site sanitation. So the sanitation status before implementing of a performance-based contract was looking like this. And the sheet flow diagram actually is what informed us and is what made now the funders to get convinced to push in money in citywide sanitation service delivery. So it was as bad as you could see: poor containment facilities, lack of treatment facilities, treatment inadequacies for wastewater treatment plant as well as the fecal sludge treatment plants. Indiscriminate disposal of human waste was the order of the day. Unemptied sludge, then emptying response to slow emptying response to service provider. Remember, we owned that the two service providers that was servicing 3 million people in the city. So we wanted now to leverage on that and now formalize the citywide inclusive sanitation service delivery. So how was our market structure prior to private service provision? So number one, septic tanks in that context was only done by free market economy. Yeah, then Petra Trino, of course, it had a very small uptake in terms of the service providers who were interested in servicing the low income areas. But for urban cities, we had a lot of interest. The reason was simple. The urban people were able to afford the service, but for the low income, it was something very, very difficult. So we owned Chazanga and Kanyama Water Trusts in the informal settlements as the only two service providers to provide both emptying and transportation of this waste. So when you request a service, you may need to get it maybe after a week or 2 weeks. And remember, when you ask for this kind of a service, it means it's emergency. It's something that has to be attended to, but lo and behold, it could take a lot of time. So how was our market assessment strategy? So we based our implementation based on the informal service provision. Remember, these two water trusts, there were some other illegal emptiers who were carrying emptying activities, mostly in the night. So their services were far much more cheaper than the two service providers that we had. So we based our pricing assessment based on what you are seeing here, like for the cost of emptying for 6 cubic meters. So in informal pit emptying, you would get it at 180 US dollars per 6 cubic meters. And then informal pit emptier, if you call them to come and empty your pit latrine, it would cost as low as 108. So we had to carry out a market assessment. What is leading to this illegal emptying? Okay, so this is the citywide approach. So after we did an assessment, then we came up with a solution. So what did we do now? After the finances were made available, I must mention that funders came in, and we had over 300 million in terms of sanitation service provision, both sewered and non-sewered sanitation. So we embarked now on the emptying services, and we zoned Lusaka into 3 cities because we wanted to regulate the service. We wanted also to monitor the service provision in the city in relation to SDG 6.2. So what were some of our objectives of the contracts? I know you know how to read. We can still share this information. I do not want to waste much of the time. So we are to come up with objective. For instance, number 1, to provide emptying and transport service for pit latrines in the contracted areas. That was one of our objectives. But remember, the utility I work for runs a model that we call a delegated business model. So the utility was not directly involved in emptying and transportation, but we leveraged on the PPPP, public-private partnership. So those are the people we brought on board. We trained them, and we empowered them before they embarked on the journey. Okay, so after the money came in, of course, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation came on board, World Bank came on board, African Development Bank came on board. So we did what we call a risk allocation assessment. Yes, the money we had, but we looked at the private operators' risk, for instance. If we are to engage a private, a company, we looked at the risk type, the demand risk type, for instance. Then on the demand risk, we were not very sure whether emptying service will have the demand as we anticipated. So what was the mitigation? We trained operators in marketing strategy and ensured that these private operators knew how to market themselves. Not only that, we identified the risk at a household level. Remember, there was an incentive that was introduced, but we are the risk again. Suppose the household does not pay the small amount that have been asked to pay. What are we going to do? So what we did is the payment was done prior to job execution. So when you need the service, you pay 25% of the total cost of the service. Then that's when now we proceed to go and execute the work. Not only that, we looked also at the performance risk. Remember, it was a performance-based contract. So we were very scared. Suppose this third party that we have contracted does not perform. What do we do? So what did we do here? We guaranteed performance operators' payments are verified and independent agent prior to performance of subsidy. So not until we see performance, we are not going to pay you. So other risk, of course, from the perspective of the utility. We had risk, authority risk, for instance. We were worried. Suppose this money that we have acquired from the funders is used in a different way. What are we going to do? How are we going to pay the service provider? What did we do? We are to ensure that all the funds that came in were ring-fenced. Even if you are to die today, if disaster to happen today, that money was not going to be touched. So it's just some of the risk assessment factors that we conducted. Now, financial model monitoring and verification operations. Again, there was a worry from the funders. Is this money going to go to the exact people that we have funded this money for? So what did we do now? We came up with a model. We have the utility, and we have got, of course, the subsidy that could come in. So what did we do? we engaged a private verification agent to verify whatever works has been done on the ground. Then they would advise whether to pay or not. Not only that, we had also to do what we call a monitoring of the service providers. How did we do? We just developed what we call a scorecard. It was giving us a percentage of performance in terms of a service provider for them to qualify to receive a payment. Yeah, so what are some of the achievements? Of course, like I mentioned, the $300 million that came, part of it went towards the construction of on-site sanitation facilities, as you can see. At least they were much better compared to what we saw on the first page when I warned you that it's a sensitive a picture. Okay, in interest of our time, we had quite a number of lessons, ladies and gentlemen, that we learned in an effort of trying to implement citywide inclusive sanitation service delivery. And these are some of the lessons that we learned. Dedicated service areas brings about efficiency and quality in the service delivery. The fact that Lusaka, of course, I look at India, you guys, you are a marvel to watch. 3 million people, what did we do? We just had to segment into 3 for easy of monitoring. So also in that capacity building, sometimes we tend to think when we are building capacity in human, we are wasting the time and we are wasting the resources, but it plays a very important role in the execution of the citywide inclusive sanitation service. There is so much to talk about, but please bear with me. I know time could not be with me. I hope to recover this in the Q&A time. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Questions, because it's a FICL/contract supply side presentation. Yes, Sagar.
You are doing a great job in Lusaka. It is happy to see. I just have a basic question, like the PPP model you are executing. So actually, I want to understand that how you guys means a private operator should have their own vehicle, and then there can be a contractor. Lusaka, the firm is having their own like FSTP. The people are having their own vehicles, and then you lend it for the service purpose. How it works over in Lusaka?
Okay, so in the context of Lusaka, what we did was that, of course, there were already private operators who knew this business far ahead of ourselves. So what we did is that we asked, for instance, the bank to just provide some sort of a transport model. So we bought the service providers vehicles so that we ensure that their performance was okay. So we had a lot of support with the service providers. Not only that, we also, for instance, ensured that we paid all their bills in relation to vaccination, the training, and the rest. So that's how we went about with the PPP model. But I must also state that in the sanitation service chain, we left the containment construction on the side of a private operator. So local masons were trained in the cities to construct the latrines. So ours was just to design a latrine, then we see them constructing and approve. But also during transportation, also we engage private operators to transport sludge to the treatment plant. Our part was only on the management of the FSTP plant, as well as monitoring and developing the standards. Yeah, I hope I've attempted to. Yeah, but I must mention, and I must appreciate India. The model that we adopted, honestly speaking, we just went to Indian sites that are providing sanitation service. We read, we copied, we pasted, and we began to edit, and it was working. Yeah, so we've come to learn more and more from you guys. I know you have gone far ahead of us, but we are still catching up. We hope to catch up soon.
Any other? Oh, there are a couple of hands here. Yes.
Great. Yeah. Just from the questions that have been fired, you can tell that you guys have gone far ahead of us. Yeah. So with regards to the to the benchmark. Remember, Zambia, we were the first utility in Lusaka to implement a city-wide inclusive sanitation service. So to have a benchmark was quite difficult, especially locally. It was quite difficult. We were doing it sometimes just by try and error. But of course, at an international standard, I mean, I'm yet to see an African country that has successfully implemented this. So what we did is that we just developed what we call a standard operating procedure based on the experiences of nations like India that are doing it. Then we just contextualized it. Okay, in our setup as a city, how do we benchmark against this? Yeah, but you are really right. We didn't have a benchmark locally that we could look at.
Excellent presentation. Here, Dhwani. I'm Dhwani from Center for Water and Sanitation, and thank you for your insightful presentation. You showed one slide on rates decided by the agency for emptying the septic tanks, if I'm not wrong. And it was based on the type of the property. For informal settlement, it was 150, and for the formal settlement, it was 180 USD. But what if the size? So what are the assumptions? I mean, size of the septic tank. Because sometimes if the size of the septic tank is bigger, then the trip travel by the truck would be higher, and that will that has a direct implication of the rates on the rates and the overall models around it. So how you have come up with this rate?
Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. When you're asking question, you would know that you are doing these things. Yeah. So that's a very great question. And that's the question again we are still struggling even after implementing, because what used to happen is if a vacuum truck is hired, so the service provider, what they will do is, number one, they look at the distance. Of course, maybe that is a major cost on their side. The number two, the size of the truck. Of course, there is a variation in sizes of truck. But again, because that time we had not started to regulate them, they would just look at you. The way you're looking nice, you are dressed nicely, then they will tell you, no, the price for this one, you can afford it. It's $2,000. I'm just giving an example. Okay, so there was no specific, like for in a central region, if I'm going to service a distance of less than 40 kilometers, this is a standard price that I could charge. So it was just based on how you are looking. When I get into your home, I see, your home is nice. You are the people is keeping my money. Please, it's 2,500. Yeah, so there wasn't really a standardized price, and that's something we are trying to work under the regulation now, because we are trying now to regulate. If you move a distance of 40 kilometers, we'll use a commuters model. If you are going to pay 2.5, it's across the board in that region. Yeah, but that's basically what we use this based on the experience of what we've had and the interview we carried out from the private operators. Have I attempted to answer your question? I know you may not be satisfied, but we can talk.
That's good enough for today's presentation. Thank you so much, Ivan, for your nice presentation. Moving on to the next present. Yes, give him a big hand, please. Yes, thank you so much. We have a very good presentation coming up on the topic following the flows, WAS realities in emerging urban centers of South Asia by Ansu Cherian. May I introduce her to the audience, please? Ansu, yes. Ansu Cherian is an urban planning and policy professionals with 12 plus years of experience working at the intersection of water, climate resilience and urban governance. As lead integrated water management at BORDA South Asia, she drives research and implementation of circular, decentralized and climate responsive water systems with a strong focus on small and emerging towns. I'll stop here if you allow me to save time for your presentation. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Hello. Okay. So today I wanted to share a piece of research that BORDA South Asia undertook along with a lot of its implementation partners across India, Nepal and Bangladesh. It's a very narrative research, so I don't think it's meant to be presented slide by slide. It's meant to be read. So I have 2-3 hard copies with me. That's the report. And for those who prefer to go paper free, we also have a QR code. But having said that, I'll try to walk you through the essence of it largely. Sorry about that. Thank you. So I think I'm repeating a little bit of myself from yesterday's presentation. So India's urbanization story is definitely not just about metros, and it's increasingly being shaped by small and medium towns where population growth, land use change, economic transitions are happening quite fastly. So nearly 39% of India's disposable income, is almost as in par with the Tier 1 towns. Almost 40% of South Asia's urban population is going to be from small towns in the next 10 years. So these towns act as very critical connectors. They link your rural hinterlands with metropolitan regions, and they continue to shape your migration, livelihoods, and regional water demand. But despite all that, they remain underserved, and planning support, institutional capacity, and infrastructure investments continue to be quite metrocentric. There is slowly a shift happening, but there is still an imbalance, and it's very critical. It's also very visible in a water sanitation sector where undercapacitated small towns are expected to manage your rising demand and climate stress with very fragmented systems that you're currently going with. So moving forward, for the study, we looked at 20 partner towns across six regions where BORDA and its partners have been working for the last 20 odd years. So that's Himachal Pradesh, Ladakh, Nepal, Kerala on the south, Karnataka, and Bangladesh and Nepal. We felt like it's a good place to start. There's much more you can do in terms of extensive research, but we also had to kind of chalk out some boundaries. So we combined, in terms of methodology, we combined in-depth interviews with municipal, state officials, water sanitation experts. We had some GIS, spatial mapping, field observations, and a lot of secondary data, as well as primary data from urban local bodies. So what we did was simple. We followed the water from source to distribution, collection, treatment, and reuse. But beyond infrastructure, we try to also capture stories, behaviors, and everyday practices that shape how services actually function. So why did we do the study? This looks like an expectation. Generally, you would expect a water loop, and I want to call it water. I don't want to call it water and sanitation. It's a total water. The water loop is supposed to look like this, but it actually looks like this in a small town context. We have lack of treatments, we have NRW, we have a lot of informal flows. All of those dotted lines are informal flows. We have an STP with a 2 MLD capacity but 2.75 MLD. Reaching there, how is the STP supposed to treat to its capacity? So these are the kind of situations. I mean, there's so much you can read through it. I also have, I'm sure there's going to be cards coming up in terms of time. But so this is what we're talking about, right, in small town context. And so we are not really far from the African states that you talked about in terms of small and medium towns. There's still a lot more work we need to do. So these are not, and also the kind of stories that are there in this report are not that which you already don't know as professionals or even as students in the space, but we wanted to document it, not like a project audit, but rather like we wanted to kind of talk about the connections, the gaps, the systemic failures that define water and sanitation in our emerging urban centers. So I'm going to take the next 5 minutes to walk you through one story of disconnect from each region, not as data points, but just as lived realities. As I also go through the story, you can also look at the loop illustration, because I'm not going to be explaining that. You can go through that as I talk about the story, and I think it's self-explanatory. Looking at Nepal, we titled the story as The Jar on the Shelf. So basically, in a hillside town like Kirtipur and Godavari, they have almost 100% pipe connection. On paper, coverage looks great, but every kitchen still keeps a 20-liter jar on the shelf. Why? Backup. It's a quiet symbol of mistrust. So because piped water comes only once in 2 or 4 days, and when the taps run dry, the families turn to jars, they turn to wells, and they also turn to tankers or which go through these very winding lanes and has blue and green stickers, blue for drinking and green for domestic water. So these are all labels. Now, these are not guarantees, but they are labels. And the real cost of water is not in the pipeline network that's laid there, but in the daily burden that these households have to continuously think of. Will I get my water? Where is my water going to come from? Okay, moving ahead. Bangladesh. So you can see the gaps, right? I'm just going to highlight that. Okay, so in a Bangladeshi small town, we have these are towns where toilets were previously not there, but now we have, you see rows of toilets proudly standing in front of homes. You have new doors, fresh paint. I think it's a matter of success. It's a statistic success. But if you look behind the toilets, you see these kind of shallow pits. They are uncovered. They're brimming because it's just rained. And once the monsoon comes, the pits overflow. Wastewater mixes with the rain. It flows into the courtyard where your kids play, your women in your house wash the rice. That's where it's flowing into. So there are no sewer plants, no treatment plants, and no regulated desludging services. Some pits are extremely close to your hand pumps. And one storm is enough to contaminate your drinking water for weeks. So I think the point is sanitation should not just be counted, it should be contained. And a closed door, of course, it offers you dignity, but without a closed system, disease is going to travel fast. Moving on to the next story. Ladakh. in Kargil, I don't know if you've all heard of this dry toilet concept that Kargil used to have. I think it's still there a little bit. That it was intended for high altitude water scarce winters, and now they're being replaced by septic tanks, and they considered a modern upgrade. But for nearly half the year, temperatures drop below zero, and septic tanks freeze, they overflow, and cannot be desludged. It's actually quite ironical. A dry toilet required no water, it allowed natural composting, and were climate responsive by design. Yet, do our central government schemes really account for such designs? Your building rules, they don't recognize dry toilets at all. So sometimes I don't think it's about replacement. You have to, you can modernize, but modernize keeping in mind local wisdom. So that's what we have learned from Kargil and Ladakh. I'm from Kerala, so I know for a fact that people rely on their wells a lot, and it's your symbol of safety. You know that well is there for you, and it's safe water. But now studies show that almost 80% of your open wells are contaminated with high levels of coliform. Of course, it gives you all sorts of diseases, hepatitis, typhoid, and why? Because you have unlined septic tanks, huge septic tanks, are not desludged for maybe for 10, 20. I think my home never desludged for 20 plus years. And they're right next to your well. So, and with your irregular desludging, over extraction of groundwater, and being right there next to your well, your water safety has to be questioned. And so that's in Kerala. Karnataka. In Chikbalapur, it's a small town in Karnataka. There's a lake bed, a very dry lake bed. It was dry for a very long time. So the government decided, okay, it's been dry for a very long time. Let's build a 10 MLD sewage treatment plant on top of the lake bed. Why not? It felt very logical. Years later, the government of Bangalore decided to send their used water to the rural areas of Bangalore through the HN Valley, KC Valley project, if you have heard of that. And what happened? Your lakes began to get filled. And now the access road to your STP is blocked. You cannot do your ONMs anymore. You don't know what's the quality of your STP water that's coming out. And so the story isn't just about flooding. It's about disconnected planning. This was intended as a lake bed. Nature remembered its pathway, it came back. We forgot to plan for it. So across all regions, the story is the same. Infrastructure without context, governance and systems, they won't fail at once, it will fail quietly in your and my home, in our wells, in our everyday life. So this research is not all sad. It also captures stories of local resilience. There are some very real opportunities also that has been identified in this report. So I would definitely encourage you to give it a read whenever possible. So what should we do? That's my concluding slide. We need to stop thinking only in terms of assets and start building systems. Pipes, toilets, treatment plants all work when they're aligned with your governance, your land use, and your finance and local capacity. So the alignment is what makes your services reliable and sustainable. Second shift is about closing the loop. So if you see most of our SFDs, WFDs, all that is all linear. But in the images that I showed before, we've tried to draw a circular loop. So close the loop, because the sanitation cannot end with the toilet and water supply cannot end with the tap. So we need to plan for the full chain. Third, context matters. Look at the context of Ladakh, Kerala, Karnataka. Why something that works in the hills might not work in the plains. So climate resilient water sanitation must be designed for your place, climate, and live realities. And finally, reuse and inclusion has to sit at the center, and that's also stemming from the presentation that I made yesterday on how treated used water is your resource, and let's use that to kind of augment your water security in these towns. So let's not allow small towns to simply be transitional spaces. Let them be engines of resilience, and it's a call to action for all donors, all practitioners, to use this research as a basic starting point, also basic discussion point, to design solutions that actually fit in these smaller towns, close loops, and build resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ansu. Quickly, we can take up for Ansu, please. Any questions? Yes, Ivan. Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking of just remaining in India, yeah, to learn more. Yeah, but I have little time to stay here. Losing dry toilets, losing wisdom. I think this is an eco-friendly statement. I just want to find out the impact of culture on these dry toilets. I'm saying so because we tried this in Zambia. Yeah, but our culture couldn't support because they required that the interface, maybe you separate urine from human waste. So we were not able to fit. Not only that, when you look at most of these facilities, eco and kind of facilities, it appears for me they are just suitable for wipers, not washers. Yes. So what's the impact of the culture? Because if I'm using a tissue, for me, I'm comfortable to go in there. Yeah, but it becomes difficult for those that are using water to use these facilities. So how do you assess the cultural impact when designing these? Are they acceptable to the society?
It was dry toilets was used in maybe it wouldn't work in a place like in the southern regions, but this was used in Ladakh for ages, and this was part of their culture. Yes, as part of exposure to all global stuff, and how you use your your flush toilets, and that exposure has definitely led, and also for tourism purposes, because there are people from across the globe coming to to Leh or Ladakh for that matter, and for that purposes they started transitioning to a westernized or whatever is the kind of toilet that we use there. So that is how. But then, so culturally, this was part of that. So we didn't try to implement this there. This was already there. We are trying to remove it from there. So that transition is happening. So we are saying, yes, this might not be in alignment with, okay, this picture does not look just like this. There are better forms of dry toilets, but the point is, we can modernize it, keeping that idea in mind, the natural composting idea. Let's keep that in mind and try and utilize it, and not completely shift to, let's say, a centralized system.
I love the idea because for me it's cost effective. There's no need to empty pit latrine. There is no need for polluting the methane that Sagar was talking about. The soil tend just to act on. I wish we can improve on our culture. I love Indian culture. Okay, that's fine. Let me end here.
I'm not going to read out their, portfolios, but yes, the first author is Dhwani Shah, second and Karan Patil, and Jigisha Jaiswal. They are all distinguished in their service to CWAS, and for the sake of time, I'm not reading out your bio. And thank you so much for presenting this particular topic to the audience. Over to you, please. And I would like to excuse me myself because I have to go and attend another conference at ITPI.
So before we begin our presentation today, I just want to put a simple question. Sanitation systems daily emits emission, methane emissions, which has a very hazardous impact on the climate. But if we consider, if we consider it as an opportunity, it has a very huge resource potential. So let's see how sanitation system, sanitation value chain has very much methane potential which we can capture. So as we know, the sanitation sector is the fourth largest contributor of methane emission. While if we consider India, sanitation has methane emission, sanitation sector contributes the 10% of the total emission. So if we focus on the emission and if we reduce the emission, so it has a it improves the public health. Also, if we converts it into the clean energy, it has a huge potential in a sanitation value chain. So while if we look into how the methane methane estimates has been carried out across the world, so it does not include the actual local conditions. This produces the incorrect data. So the actual field on ground field measurements and local data, there is a lack of opportunity to carry out the methane quantification study. So to carry out the methane quantification study across the various cities, so we have considered few suggestions which are which we can see, as we have assumed that the on-field emissions are higher as compared to the IPCC methods. Then the poorly maintained seawards septic tanks have high methane emission potential. Then also regular desludging, scheduled desludging, which is carried out, has reduces the methane emission. So overall, the methane generated across sanitation system presents the real opportunity if we capture it correctly. So this sanitation value chain diagram shows the various units which emits the methane. As you can see, the containment unit, treatment plants have methane emission across the sanitation value chain. So methane emissions are mostly contributed by anaerobic and poorly maintained sewer network. Also the septic tanks where there is a high, very badly anaerobic digestion. And to understand these emission across the value chain, we have carried out on-field quantification study. So generally we found that the methane estimates uses the national and global averages, but in India, where the tier 1 and tier 2 approach is considered, they include only limited data. So we have used the tier 3 approach, where we have used the actual on-field data to carry out and to understand the methane quantification study to reduce the gap which we found in the tier 1 and tier 2 approach. So coming to the study area for our methane quantification study, so we have selected the cities which have different sanitation situation. Like as you can see, the cities have different sanitation situations. Few cities have partially sewered sanitation system. Few have some of them have fully covered sewer network, and some are rely on on-site sanitation system. Also, they face the various climatic conditions, which shows the varying emissions and which gives a variable data of emission to further strengthen our study. So we have used a simple locally available units to carry out our quantification study. So we have used a flux chamber approach, stack-based approach, and a sensor-based approach. We have also considered the airflow uh, to get accurate measurements of methane while carrying out the quantification study. So now, while carrying out quantification, we have observed that the emissions have observed at containments as well as the various units of STP. So we have identified about 24 septic tanks across the 3 cities, and we have carried out the quantification study throughout the day to get the variable emission measurements. Also, we have carry out the emission study at various units of STP. So while carrying out this quantification study, we have faced the various local conditions that our data collection has been affected by the rainfall as well as the power cut. Also, while identifying the actual methane emission, while identifying the methane emission point, the STPs are located near the landfill site, so it was complicated to identify the exact point of methane emission. It's okay. Okay. So, so these are the on-field and city level quantification measurements we have carried out, and while we have scaled it up to city level, we have observed that we get a very high methane emissions as compared to the IPCC method. In a city like Ichalkaranji, our study shows that the only the sanitation system emits very contributes the very high emission if we get the total as compared to total emission of the city. So majorly the emission has focused on the sludge treatment sludge holding units, treatment units, so which has a very high potential to capture the methane. So so if we simply relate the methane to daily and simply to daily scalable parameters. So we can see that if we relate the methane emission to oxygen reduction potential, we can see that if the oxygen reduction potential reduces, the methane emission increases with high anaerobic conditions at septic tanks as compared to the relationship with BOD. But if we see the methane emission at STP, it has a good relationship with BOD COD relating to the effluent wastewater treatment quality as well as the treatment process. Also, also the VSS relates to the relationship with biomass and sludge control. So these relationship shows the how methane relates to the BOD COD and oxygen reduction potential. So as I have presented in the previous slide, so we have observed that after the quantification study, we get the methane emissions twice as compared to our IPCC estimations, which reflects the current inventories have may underestimation. Also, these factors have high impacts due to high anaerobic conditions, poor management of sludge, and other factors. So, in the city of Isilkaranji, where the scheduled desludging, regular desludging is happening, we observe that the methane emission has a direct impact on desludging frequency. The septic tanks where desludging has happened regularly with fixed intervals have less emissions as compared to the septic tanks where desludging happened long back and also has direct impact on sanitation workers' safety. Now, to further strengthen, to further strengthen the scheduled desludging study, more more observations need to be carried out with seasonal variability and temperature. Yeah. So our the next part of the presentation is focused on the landscape study of various STP across India, which we have carried out, which will be presented by my colleague Dhwani.
Hello. Thank you, Omkar. So, as Omkar explained that we are understanding how methane can be mitigated across the service chain, and that is the USP of our study. So, after understanding the capturing part of the methane at the STPs and also how the estimations are at treatment level, we understood that there is a potential to consider methane as a resource at treatment plants. So, we carried out a study landscape study. What is the ongoing practices of considering methane and capturing at a resource at India's STP? So overall, as we see that we have less than 50% of the treatment capacity considering the compared to waste which is generated at STPs. So as he explained that methane has a dual nature. If we capture it properly, then it can convert. If we can really convert it as a green energy. So what is the potential at STPs? We identified that cities convert this sludge is the potential resource from where methane can be captured under treating it in a anaerobic digester, and at there the sludge is converted into biogas where the 50 to 60%. It is not working properly if I remove it from my mouth. To speak like touching it on my mouth. Hello. Yeah. So hello. Yeah. Thank you. So in biogas, 50 to 60% methane is there, and also CO2 and H2S is there. So if biogas is captured at after treating it in an anaerobic digester, we can convert it for generating electricity at the STP and reuse it at STP. Then in other energy conversions, like we can convert it into bio CNG. And also other reuse purposes, like sludge can be reused for the construction material where the methane mitigation can happen. So considering the understanding of the STP's potential, we identified that out of 1400 plus STPs in India, only 18 STPs are actually capturing methane and converting it as a resource. So we shortlisted 11 STPs where we have, right as of now, we can visit 5 cities, and those 5 cities are of different technologies from different parts of India, and also having a different contractual mechanism. So we did a study and tried to understand what are the business model components of the study in terms of technology, contractual agreement, financial models, and monitoring mechanism. So from our study, we identified that wastewater treatment plants are significantly underutilized, first of all, and that is also affecting overall methane generation. Then methane recovery is viable across the scale, be it a small scale treatment plant or a large scale treatment plant, given the factor that the performance varies based on the technology, influence, quality, monitoring mechanism, and business models. During our study, we also identified whether if the technology is USB, where the methane potential capturing the methane is higher, but due to contractual agreements, like they do not have any agreement with the private operator has to produce certain amount of energy out of methane. So there is no interlink between the contractual model and the technology, if given the technology was proper, suitable. So that way we identified there are the impacting factors for the considering methane as a resource are, and STPs are technical aspect, monitoring, governance, and business model. But business model is something which actually really affect the overall functioning of the STPs, and why and that's where the role of private operator comes into the picture. Because and to understand it further, we try to do a cost benefit analysis so that this overall study is considered by the Indian government, because only 18 STPs are capturing methane, why other STPs are not doing it, because of some other cost related implications. So if we understand the overall picture, for one, we can reduce the operating expenditure, and also we can generate revenue by selling the sludge. And there are some governance support, which is there is a need to plug the point where there is, it is not like there is no forward and backward linkage is missing in terms of governance aspect. There are such schemes available, but why the private operator are still not coming in, that is what we are trying to look at, and we will do a further assessment on this. In terms of disseminating, what we are doing right now, we are disseminating our studies at various platforms, like we are giving policy inputs. We will launch our guidebook on moving towards climate resilience and wash service in the Maharashtra Mumbai Climate Week. And we will do a webinar series where peer-to-peer learning will happen with the STPs that we studied. We will call the officials. And apart from that, we are going to do a capacity building initiative with 7 divisions of Maharashtra. Then in terms of academic and sectorial partnership, we are guiding our students, and also will are disseminating in at international platforms, like we just presented at IWA Water Week. And right now we are doing it. So concluding, methane is actually a resource if we capture it properly, and by strengthening empirical measurement and improving the sludge management and enabling the methane recovery in terms of overall environment, strengthening the forward and backward linkages, city can move towards climate resilient, energy efficient sanitation system. Thank you.
The old one had to go. So any question answers, if anybody has, to Dhwani and Omkar and Jigisha? Any questions? Okay, over to you.
I love the study, but I just want some clarification whether you are still maybe making effort to look at the harvesting of this methane or the gas. Yeah, the challenge I'm having is we are harvesting and we are just using it domestically, like at the FSTP for heating, I mean for cooking. Yeah, but what I've discovered is since I don't do much of the studies, it appears that gas is much more heavier than LPG. So probably it may need some sort of purifying. Have you taken interest to look into that?
Yeah, so at we are saying that we can generate methane at STPs, and STPs, if we do treatment at anaerobic digester, and after generating biogas, you have to have a H2S scrubber which remove the impurities, and then you can use it for the cooking or the energy purposes. So there has to be a scrubber component to clean the energy which is gas that is generated. That we will have to look into it. We haven't checked those aspects.
That's a good point. I think
yeah, we haven't checked.
we'll have to look at this angle of density of gas, and also I think fair point. I think it's not looked right now in this study, but point taken. Yeah. Yes, Sagar. Last question.
I must appreciate your efforts. It is very difficult to get this data, especially with integrating these sensors and analyzer. Sincerely, it's a great job, and I think it is only one in India, right? Nobody else has done it, and I think in Southeast Asia as well. So a thing I was, if how you selected the sites for measuring the methane, like how you selected.
So as you can see, back next. No, this way. So basically, as you can see, so we have selected our cities based on different sanitation. First, we have identified cities where there are different sanitation situations. Like you can see, we have selected 3 cities: PCMC, Ichalkaranji, and Y. Y is the fully depends on on-site sanitation. PCMC is fully depends on fully sewered city, and Ichalkaranji is partially sewered city. So for identifying the septic tanks, we have identified different types of septic tanks based on the size of septic tank, how much people using it, then dislodging frequency, and the volume. So these are the various parameters we have selected to identify our septic tanks. And for identifying the STPs, we have identified their different capacities, the different technologies, and the load which is coming at STP. So these are the various parameters we have identified to finalize our septic tanks and STPs in these cities.
Okay, I think let's conclude. Thank you to all the panelists and the presenters who are here. And I see some of them online as well. Okay. Yes, if you can just stop sharing the screen. Let's have a separate conversation. Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. So thank you everyone who presented. I think I heard the last 2-3 presentations. So it was very interesting to hear about the variations of work that have been done. And we hope that you all will take back some experience and learning from here and work on it further in your geographies. Okay, so I see Pablo there now. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Pablo, also for joining online for this session. So we formally close this session. Thank you, everyone, to all the participants, presenters, the student volunteers team, and the team from CWAS for helping this session, making this section successful. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. One group photo. Come with all the presenters. Yeah. And the student volunteers and the participants. Everybody over here. Come.